Since we just closed out a month, just briefly mention October, and this is the regional look at how October shaped up. Another warm month for the entire Northeast, really a lot of the country, and someplace near Tamaqua, Pennsylvania, they always just seem to run cold, and so you get this little below average blip there, but I disregarded it. For the state, for Pennsylvania as a whole and the whole region, it was a mild month. Country as a whole, the scale does change a bit here. You can see, though, that the center of the warmth for October was from the Tennessee Valley back to the front range of the Rockies, some spots 6 to 8 degrees above average again. You really were restricted to find cooler than average conditions in October. You were really restricted to where it rained a lot from Northern California and just patches of the Northwest. So October was warm for the U.S. Precipitation-wise, of course, Pennsylvania was a divided state, mainly thanks to that one slow-moving, juicy front. Of course, State College here, it's like the great October gradient of rain. So really, if you just got north and west of here, the northwestern half of Pennsylvania, quite the wet October, 200 to 300% of average in a lot of locations, whereas southeastern Pennsylvania was a dry October. Some places not even seeing a quarter of the amount of rain that they should. Eastern Massachusetts, another thing to see in case you hadn't really been following areas northeast of here. Drought-stricken areas of southeastern New England did get some beneficial rain, at least toward the coast. Interior sections, not so much. And the country as a whole, the Northwest really just sticks out here. Large portion of the Northwest saw well above average rain. Seattle, countless stations in the Northwest saw their wettest October. Spokane, Washington actually saw their wettest month of any month on record. 6.23 inches of rain, I believe, and their records go back to 1881. So significant in that sense. Also, the footprint of Matthew shows up there in the Eastern Carolinas, which seems like so long ago, but that was just at the start of October. But much of the middle, it was a dry October as well. In the interior Southeast, Birmingham, Alabama, no rain at all, not even a trace for the month. So definitely feast or famine. Real quick, we'll just go back about 10 days and talk about how we got to where we are now. This is the, what is this? This is the 10-day forecast height anomaly from both the Euro and the GFS from Sunday, the 23rd, so 10 days ago, and both ended up being a little bit right, but not exactly for the right reason. Here's a look at how things initialized this morning. Big ridge of high pressure aloft down sitting over the southeast. We've been obviously in a bit of a warm pattern here for this week. Both models eventually were right for the right reason. Just 2 days later, this is how it was. This was a 192-hour forecast from both models, or the ensemble mean of both models from Tuesday, the 25th of October. And in general, the idea here from this point on was pretty well in agreement that this warm pattern that we've been enjoying this week has been fairly advertised for 8-10 days now, but things are going to start to change a little bit. Get out of here. Let's talk some actual weather right now. So obviously it's become a little bit more disturbed of a day outside. Right now we've got a front that's moving through the state. There's two little areas of trophiness here on the pressure pattern. On the zoom in a little bit here. Cold front right now is in the second trough right now, going from just a little bit north of Scranton, north of Williamsport. It's through Bradford. It's about near Du Bois now, and then back into central Ohio. This leading edge of precipitation here in southeastern Pennsylvania, there's a little bit of a prefrontal trough going through. There's a little bit of wind convergence. Generally a little bit west of southerly across the northern mid-Atlantic. Then you go to a bit westerly behind that. Then you have this broad area of some west-southwesterly winds before you go northwesterly now across northwestern Pennsylvania. So the actual cold front is tucked back in here, just about getting to Du Bois. Their wind will probably switch around any minute. With the actual front, not too much rain associated with it. The main upper level support is up here in northern New England and lifting out to the north and east. There's actually some energy left behind down in parts of the Mississippi Valley. So this was another one of these fronts that started to lose some of its luster as it comes toward the east. And there's actually going to be a few more of those of sorts in the next few days and into early next week. Really no big weather to talk about really for much of the country over the next few days. So we're in this tranquil weather pattern, as Mike mentioned. So temperature-wise right now, still getting to near 70 in Philadelphia. Not sure that the Parts of the Delmarva, though, you can see mid to upper 70s, so somebody's going to get close to 80 here before the clouds and these showers get to places like northern Delaware, Wilmington, interior South Jersey. Could touch 80 today before this moves through. Once the northwesterly flow takes over, temperatures have already started to fall a few degrees in the northwest, and that trend is going to start to work in here within the next few hours. We're probably at our high right around now or in the next hour or so, if it hasn't already happened. We just had a rain shower go through a little bit ago. But temperatures will start to fall off gradually this afternoon, and then a general colder air mass comes in tonight. Satellite. Yeah, so here's the visible imagery. You can see where these clouds are starting to have more of a northerly movement or component to them behind the front here. But in general, much of Pennsylvania is now socked in clouds. So this is basically the end of this early November dream of sorts that we've been enjoying. Here's a wider look at things. Once this front goes through, you can almost see it here. These clouds get a little bit more textured again up into southern Canada, parts of northern Michigan. The actual upper level shortwave associated with this whole thing is lagging behind a little bit. This is actually going to come through overnight into early Friday, and that's when the actual cold air aloft of sorts and the real cold advection moves in. So tomorrow's going to be a chilly day, and once you get west of this, there's not a whole lot happening out over the plains and the Rockies. In fact, I'll show you this in a little bit. The next week, if you're into following the record warmth around earlier this week, the record warmth was in the southeast, the interior southeast over towards Texas. Next week, if you want to follow the record warmth, it's going to be showing up across the northern plains and then into southern Canada. That's where the highest anomalies look to show up. But we're going to be getting into the influence of a broad northwesterly flow, which looks to generally persist here for quite a while from this point forward. This is the GFS ensemble. Rich Grum will be proud of me for showing this. He's not here, but if somebody happens to see him, just I don't know. So this is starting right now, and on the bottom here, I'll focus here on the bottom panel. These are the 850 millibar temperatures and their standard deviations from normal. And so it's been warm, but as we go through time here, this is now we're to tomorrow. Notice that not really far from normal as far as the 850s are concerned, but off to the north and west of the northern Rockies, southern Canada, this is where the next big ridge is going to be popping up. And as we actually get into the second half of the weekend, while in the east here we're in general northwesterly flow, you'll start to see this 3 to 4 standard deviation bubble show up here later in the weekend. So this is going to be some pretty big warmth with respect to normal going up into central Canada and parts of the Dakotas probably too. I checked the records for Fargo for this time of year. The record maxes are around 70, and Saturday, Sunday, Monday could easily get into the 70s through much of the Dakotas. So this is probably where the record warmth will be making news early next week. Then going a little bit further down the road, that big anomalous warm bubble there, that will start to dissipate. Notice here in Pennsylvania, at times we get close to some positive anomalies at 850, but not so much of big significance. We're going to try to recover temperature-wise early next week a little bit. There'll be a surface high that's going to try sliding off to the east, so we'll try to get a little bit milder, but I wouldn't rush any type of big warm-up into our area next week. It doesn't look like that'll stay away. It'll just go a little further down the road. And you can see it tries to get warm at least at 8:50 Tuesday a little bit before we're going to get another disturbance to come by the northwest. That'll end that, and then look at this. Here we go again in those same areas up across the northern Rockies, the northern plains in Canada, where things tend to come back. Just looking at the overall weather pattern for the next couple of days. Here's the 500 millibar pattern. This is the GFS. This is right now, so not too much in the way of there's a shortwave in here. This is what's lagging behind, but it's not anything very distinguished or notable. But this is what's going to come through overnight tonight. So here we are at 0Z, the shortwave associated with this incoming trough, still to our west. This comes through overnight. Then the northwesterly flow at the high levels will take over, being cold advection for much of the day on Friday. That'll start to relax a little bit as we head into Saturday. It's going to be an area of surface high pressure off to our west. So after a breezy day Friday, I think Friday the winds will probably be 10 to 15 miles an hour from the northwest, a little bit brisk. With temperatures that will be knocked back closer to normal. It'll be feeling much cooler than, obviously much cooler than what we've been enjoying this week. Saturday, of course, it's the Iowa game. I think that it's going to be a chilly morning, probably starting out the day on Saturday, low to mid 30s around here. Nothing unseasonably cold, but it'll be feeling a little bit chilly since the last couple of mornings our lows have not been anywhere close to that. During the day on Saturday, you can see another one of these little short waves is going to pass by to our north and east. I don't think it's going to do much for the weather in Pennsylvania, maybe a few more clouds in northeastern Pennsylvania. Saturday night, there's going to be yet another one that originates up here in southeastern Canada. This one becomes slightly more interesting for people off to our north and east. Eventually, this is going to try and form a bit more of a storm for eastern New England. But as far as how that affects the game, I think there's probably going to be another weak surface front that comes through with that one late Saturday night. Moisture starved, maybe a sprinkle or two overnight. But if I had to give a game forecast, I'd say partly to maybe mostly cloudy. There'll probably be some high clouds that'll stream in ahead of that. So that'll actually help to keep temperatures from plunging. So Saturday's probably a day that mix of sun and clouds, the high probably gets into the middle 50s, not far from normal. We could actually hit our min for Saturday night into Sunday, possibly around game time before clouds start to increase a little bit. So the game probably starts in the upper 40s, then falls a little bit toward the end, maybe going to the mid 40s. Thanks to some clouds, though, it doesn't look like it's going to be a temperature plunge, but still, modestly bundling up. After that goes by, we stay in this northwesterly flow into early next week. There is a ridge that's trying to pop up here to our west. The surface high pressure associated with this is going to be coming overhead on Monday, so the breeze is going to go away. And it's the time of year that with the low sun angle, you're not going to get a big bounce in temperature unless you get the wind involved at least a little bit. So that's why I wouldn't be so quick to warm it up in any appreciable way early next week, particularly in central and eastern Pennsylvania. By late Monday into Tuesday, high pressure is going to be near us or maybe slightly to our east, so the wind flow will be southeasterly or southerly, at least in the eastern 2/3 of the state. So if any part of Pennsylvania gets any type of warm surge early next week, it'll be western Pennsylvania, much like I think this past Tuesday. I think western Pennsylvania close to 80, where the rest of us were still stuck in the 50s and 60s. So similar setup early next week. And then eventually by the middle part of next week, obviously Tuesday's election day, the country as a whole looks very quiet weather-wise. Tuesday night into Wednesday, another one of these weak short waves will try to come through with a collapsing front. So aside from a few light showers or sprinkles late Tuesday into Wednesday, it otherwise looks pretty uneventful. We'll go down to the surface here. So here's 0Z tonight. Main trough and shortwave is still back to our north and west. Precipitation at that point should generally be over, although until this swings through, it could still be some sprinkles or light showers in the high ground of northern Pennsylvania. By the weekend, here's Saturday night, 8 o'clock. High pressure is to our west. Here's the burgeoning area. Oh, just kidding. Here's this weak burgeoning area of low pressure associated with that short wave to our north and east Saturday night. So, I mean, you can kind of get the hint here in the 700 millibar humidity that there's probably going to be some increase in the clouds. But in general, I think this comes through moisture starved. And then going beyond that, there's the high as it comes over early next week. Monday morning looks like chilly morning. If there's going to be a chilliest morning of the week, it's probably Monday morning. But it's probably not going to be too far from average, just cold compared to what we've been experiencing. And then by the time we get to Tuesday, here's this next, well, this is actually the first I'm looking at the 12Z GFS, and now it has this thing out here. But in general, late Tuesday, there's going to be a front of sorts trying to move toward the east. Again, it doesn't look like there's a ton of moisture to work with, but if you just look at the big picture here, minus the 12Z GFS showing this, in general, it's not a very active weather pattern. You got some storminess still near the Pacific Northwest. I mean, there could be some rain near the West Coast, but for November standards, I mean, large area of high pressure over a good deal of the east, so at least from a weather standpoint, there doesn't look to be any problems on election day. Emphasis on the weather related. And then, so that's really the short range, and then I'll just briefly touch on this middle of the month pattern change that's been quite the topic of the Twitter sphere lately. By the time we get to late next weekend, and into the following week, it does appear as though if there's going to be a general trough in the 500 millibar pattern, or really the pattern in general, it wants to try to come into the eastern United States. So I'm just fast forwarding here, it's hour 300, so tread lightly. But the idea that things try to change a little bit once we get beyond the medium range period. It's certainly on the table, but the biggest, I guess, holdback with trying to go for, you know, some epic pattern going forward is the fact that there's still problems in the North Pacific. The source region is not too cold yet. I mean, Canada right now, it's not warm, but it's much warmer than average. So the source region for where we'd be looking to is not the coldest right now. I'll take a wider look at this. We'll just back out. So here's the overall 500 millibar pattern from the GFS ensembles by Tuesday the 15th. And this big area of low heights out near the Aleutians. I mean, this is still having it's still having an influence. It's actually, there's still a lot of Pacific air involved here. I mean, this is not a classic cross-polar flow type look. There's been, I don't know if you've been following global weather at all, but Asia this month has just had a continuous, anomalously cold October. There's a lot of cold air that's been dumped into Siberia. They've grown a lot of snow. But as far as Canada, as far as our side of the Arctic, it hasn't been quite the same. So if we can get this Gulf of Alaska and Aleutian low to try and dissipate a little bit or back away and try to get the overall height pattern to change a little bit, it could get cold later in November. I mean, it does appear there's pretty good agreement that a pattern like this is going to set up, but just because you have this area of low heights in the east, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be Arctic outbreaks of air, because the source region right now just isn't there yet. One thing that this would at least, temperature-wise aside, it does appear as though the second half of November could at least become a stormier one, whether that means rain or cold enough for snow. But I mean, a pattern like this where you have low heights and low heights below high heights, I mean, that at least looks like a stormier look. This could be beneficial to those drought-stricken areas to the southeast that I had mentioned before. It's something that they'd probably be pulling for, but I'm by no means an expert on long-range forecasting, but I'm just, as far as this mid-month pattern change, I'm treading lightly. It does appear as though the whole flow pattern in general does look to rearrange, but as far as jumping on an Arctic air bandwagon, it just seems a little bit too early to say. But I'll just briefly summarize. So we've got this front going through Pennsylvania today. I think from the rain standpoint, much of it's behind us. The upper level support is just not there for Pennsylvania. So it's going to be breezy this afternoon. Winds will start to pick up once this front goes through. Could gust 20 miles an hour. Friday, another breezy day. Winds 10 to 15 miles an hour from the northwest, some higher gusts. Then that high will start to build in. Eventually over the weekend, the breezes will slowly start to diminish. For the Iowa game, probably partly to mostly cloudy at game time. The morning probably starts off fairly sunny, but then clouds will just increase somewhat during the day. After highs in the mid-50s, we'll probably fall down into the 40s for game time and then try to flatline. Saturday night, probably fairly cloudy of a night with that next disturbance coming through. A bit of a breeze from the northwest. The main surface high comes overhead Monday into early Tuesday. I'd be cautious not to warm it up too much, though, because, like I say, it's the time of year where you really need to get the wind involved. And even though we do have that ridge coming over with the high nearby, I don't see much wind, so anybody that gets warm Monday into Tuesday would be limited to the west. And then late on election day into Wednesday, another one of these weak disturbances will come through, probably rather dry again, and the country as a whole looks fairly quiet, at least through the middle part of next week. And then maybe next Thursday's speaker will have more excitement to talk about. But with that, I'll take any questions or open it up. But yeah.
Yeah, good discussion. Enjoyed your chronological summary of October. I was down in Central Virginia over the weekend and didn't realize how dry it had been. Upstate New York, where I'm from, had a real dry, really bad.
Yeah, so I'll just go back to the map here. I mean, from a pattern or a stitching perspective, I mean, it really was it's not a very typical precip anomaly that you'd expect to find, particularly in the fall. I mean, it looks very, very odd, and even like the areas in southeastern Virginia that benefited from the Matthew rings, or benefited as far as normals go, but not necessarily the results. But yeah, it's a very odd layout how it all worked out.